There is a building on Pico Boulevard in Los Angeles that has been standing for over 50 years. Beige walls, no windows, no sign above the entrance telling you what happens inside. Every single day, thousands of people drive past it without a second thought. It blends into the city the way unremarkable buildings do when you stop noticing them. But inside that building, right now, 52 oil wells are actively pulling crude petroleum from the ground beneath one of the most expensive neighborhoods in America. And that is not even the strange part, because that building is not alone. There is another active drilling site concealed behind the Beverly Center shopping mall. Beverly Hills High School had one operating beneath its football field until 2017. Long Beach Harbor has 4 artificial islands built in the 1960s to look like beachfront resorts, palm trees, waterfalls, colorful modernist towers that are actually oil platforms still producing today. And the people walking past all of it every single day have absolutely no idea. Beneath Los Angeles sits one of the richest oil basins on Earth. Billions of barrels of crude buried beneath luxury homes, shopping malls, public schools, and beachfront condominiums. The oil did not arrive recently. It has been there for tens of millions of years. It built this city once before, and most of the people living above it have no idea it is still there. So how did one of America's biggest oil cities become a place where almost nobody knows the oil is still flowing? How did the wells disappear? And why does California, a state sitting on top of all of this, still import 70% of its crude oil from the other side of the planet? The Los Angeles basin has already produced more than 9 billion barrels of oil, not over its geological history. In recorded human extraction alone, 9 billion barrels from a single basin sitting beneath one of the most recognizable skylines in the world. Right now, more than 20,000 active, idle, or abandoned wells are sunk into the ground across Los Angeles County. 20,000 wells, and roughly 1 in every 3 residents of the city lives within 1 mile of an active producing well, not near a refinery, not near a pipeline terminal, within 1 mile of a working wellhead extracting crude from beneath their neighborhood. In a city famous for Hollywood, beaches, and avocado toast, most of those people have never thought about it. The biggest single field sits beneath Long Beach. It is called the Wilmington Oil Field, and at its peak, it held around 3 billion barrels of crude. It was so productive, so relentlessly extracted, that the ground above it began to physically sink. Some areas of Long Beach dropped by nearly 30 feet as oil was removed from underground chambers, and nothing replaced the empty space. The city had to build reinforced seawalls around the harbor to keep the Pacific Ocean from reclaiming entire neighborhoods that were literally descending into the earth. The Wilmington field is still producing today, roughly 46,000 barrels every single day. That is more daily output than the entire national production of some OPEC member countries, from a single field in the southern end of Los Angeles County that almost nobody in Los Angeles has heard of. To understand how a city could build itself directly on top of one of the largest urban oil deposits in North American history, and then essentially forget about it, you have to go back to the beginning, not to the oil companies, not to the refineries. You have to go back to a broke man watching a mule-drawn cart move through the street. The oil beneath Los Angeles was never a secret. It was always there. In 1769, when Spanish explorer Gaspar de Portola led the first European expedition through what would become the city, his scouts came across something they could not explain near what is now Wilshire Boulevard. Pools of thick, black, viscous liquid seeping from the earth. The Chumash people had been using it for thousands of years already, as waterproof caulking for their ocean-going canoes, as adhesive for tools, as sealant, as a material so ordinary and available that it required no ceremony. The Spanish named the site Rancho La Brea, the tar ranch. The oil was so present, so abundant, so woven into the landscape that it barely warranted serious attention. Then, in 1892, a man named Edward Doheny changed the entire equation. Doheny was completely broke, living in a boarding house in downtown Los Angeles, watching the city grow around him while he accumulated nothing. One afternoon, he noticed a mule-drawn cart passing below on the street, its wheels caked thick with black mud. He asked the driver where it came from. The driver pointed to a vacant lot near what is now Dodger Stadium. Doheny walked there, found the lot, and dug a hole in the dirt using a pick and a sharpened telephone pole. At 160 feet underground, he struck oil. That single discovery, made by a broke man with no equipment and a borrowed method, set off a drilling frenzy across the city that never fully stopped. Within 5 years of Doheny's first strike, there were 550 producing wells operating across Los Angeles. By 1897, the city was pumping over 1 million barrels of crude every single year. The quiet agricultural center of citrus groves and cattle ranches transformed overnight into an oil boomtown. The Los Angeles Times described the scene in 1900 as the erection of unsightly derricks and tanks almost in a citizen's dooryard, whether they were willing or not. Nobody was asking permission. The oil was there, people were going to extract it, and the city was going to get rich. The boom. Then, in 1921, oil was discovered in Long Beach, and the madness reached a completely different scale. The Long Beach field was so extraordinarily productive that land rights were sold by the square inch, not the acre, the square inch. Investors who understood what was underground paid extraordinary prices for fractions of real estate measured at the scale of a human fingernail because they knew what was sitting below. In 1923 alone, the Long Beach field produced 68 million barrels of crude oil in a single calendar year. 68 million in 12 months from one basin. By the mid-1920s, the Los Angeles basin was producing 1/5 of the entire nation's oil supply. 1/5 from a single geological structure beneath a single city on the Pacific coast. The fortunes that came out of the ground were staggering. Edward Doheny, the man with the telephone pole and the empty pockets, became one of the wealthiest people in American history. His oil money built the Greystone Mansion in Beverly Hills, 55 rooms, 18 acres, completed in 1928, still standing today. J. Paul Getty, whose name now graces one of the most prestigious art museums in the world, made his initial fortune in Los Angeles oil fields before the movie industry existed as we know it. The Beverly Hillbillies, the television comedy about a family that strikes oil and moves to California, was not a piece of fiction when it aired in the 1960s. It was a cultural memory. The premise was so instantly recognizable to American audiences because it had actually happened to real families in this city more than once. The oil-built Los Angeles, its roads, its water infrastructure, its early economy, its first wealthy families. Before the studios came, before aerospace came, before the tech industry or the fashion industry or any of the things that define modern Los Angeles, there was crude oil pumping out of the ground and building everything above it. But by the 1960s, the city had grown up and packed itself densely around the wells, and nobody wanted to look out their window and see a drilling derrick. So the oil companies decided to make them disappear. The building on Pico Boulevard near Genesee Avenue was completed in 1968. From the street, it is indistinguishable from any mid-century commercial building in Los Angeles. Beige exterior, no windows, no signage suggesting what happens inside. But the interior is something else entirely. A drilling derrick mounted on wheels rolls along a track from wellhead to wellhead, extracting crude from wells that slant diagonally underground at precisely calculated angles, reaching pockets of oil that sit beneath some of the most expensive residential real estate in California. The people who live within blocks of that building drive past it every single day. Most of them have never thought about what it is. That is the point. Beverly Hills High School was another example of disappearing oil infrastructure. For decades, an active drilling tower operated on the school campus, concealed behind walls covered in quilted decorative fabric panels. A deliberate aesthetic decision made specifically to hide oil extraction from students, parents, and the surrounding neighborhood. The well generated meaningful royalty income for the school district for years. It also became the subject of an Aaron Brockovich investigation after residents near the school began reporting unexplained health symptoms, nosebleeds, persistent headaches, unusual chemical odors in the air. But the most theatrical piece of camouflage in Los Angeles oil history sits in Long Beach Harbor. In the 1960s, 4 artificial islands were constructed directly in the water offshore. The project was designed by a Hollywood set designer named Joseph Linish. Each island was built with palm trees, waterfalls, synchronized color-changing lights at night, and modernist architectural towers that, from the shore, look indistinguishable from resort destinations. Tourists have photographed them for decades. People visiting the harbor point them out as something interesting to see. They are oil drilling platforms. Named the Thumbs Islands, after the consortium of oil companies that funded them, they are still operating today, still producing crude from beneath the floor of Long Beach Harbor, still concealed behind the same palm trees and waterfall installations they were built with 60 years ago. In total, oil companies across Los Angeles built fake buildings, fake islands, fake office parks, and decorative concealment walls across one of the most photographed and scrutinized cities on Earth. And most of it worked completely. The oil kept flowing. The neighborhoods kept growing. Almost nobody noticed. The La Brea tar pits on Wilshire Boulevard are not a museum exhibit. They are a geological event happening in real time, in the middle of a major American city, on one of the most expensive streets in the country. Oil is still seeping to the surface there today, exactly as it has been doing for over 40,000 years. The same subsurface pressure that was pushing crude upward when mammoths and saber-toothed cats were wandering the area during the last ice age is still operating now. The lighter molecular components evaporate as the oil reaches the surface, leaving behind thick black asphalt that accumulated deep enough to trap and preserve the bones of Pleistocene megafauna. The bones being extracted from the tar on Wilshire Boulevard belonged to living animals breathing Los Angeles air long before a single human settlement existed here. The pressure that swallowed them has not changed. It has not stopped. It is simply still pushing. The reason so much oil exists beneath the city comes down to geology, measured over tens of millions of years. Between 5 and 23 million years ago, the tectonic plates beneath Southern California shifted from a subduction system to a strike-slip fault system, the same fault system responsible for California's earthquakes today. That shift stretched the crust, opening a deep structural basin that filled with up to 6 miles of marine sediment over millions of years. Organic material accumulated at the bottom of that ancient seafloor, got buried, got compressed, got cooked under heat and pressure, and became petroleum. The fault lines running through the basin today act as natural migration pathways, channeling oil upward through the rock toward the surface. The La Brea tar pits are simply the places where the pressure wins, where the oil finally breaks through, where something that happened tens of millions of years ago makes direct contact with the present day, right there on Wilshire Boulevard, surrounded by traffic and tourists and museums and coffee shops. California today imports approximately 70% of its crude oil from outside the state. Tankers transit the Pacific Ocean and the Panama Canal to deliver petroleum to refineries in a state that is sitting directly on top of one of the most productive oil basins on the continent. The Wilmington field alone has an estimated 900 million barrels of future recoverable oil still underground, according to U.S. Geological Survey projections. 900 million barrels, enough to supply California's refineries for years without a single additional tanker crossing the Pacific. But in 2022, California passed the Neighborhood Protection Act, establishing a mandatory 3,200-foot buffer zone between new oil drilling operations in homes, schools, hospitals, and healthcare facilities. In a city as densely built as Los Angeles, where neighborhoods press directly against each other with no open land between, that buffer zone makes new urban drilling practically impossible within city limits. The existing permitted wells are still producing. The Wilmington field is still pumping its 46,000 barrels a day. But the state that built the modern environmental movement that leads the nation in electric vehicle adoption, that has committed to phasing out gas-powered vehicle sales by 2035, is now importing the same product from Saudi Arabia, Ecuador, and Alaska, rather than extracting it from beneath Pico Boulevard. That contradiction is not a political argument. It is simply what the numbers show. The tar at La Brea has been seeping to the surface for 40,000 years. It is seeping today. It will seep tomorrow. The pressure underneath Los Angeles has not been resolved. It has been managed, redirected, concealed behind beige walls and quilted flower panels and artificial island waterfalls built by a Hollywood set designer hired specifically to make an oil operation look like a vacation destination. The 20,000 wells sunk into the Los Angeles basin are still there. Most idle, some active. All of them still connected to the same geological structure that Edward Deheny reached with a sharpened telephone pole in 1892. The same structure that produced 1/5 of the nation's oil supply in a single decade. The same structure that built Beverly Hills mansions and funded the early dreams of an industry that became Hollywood before anyone called it that. The city built on top of all of this has largely moved on from thinking about what is underneath it. That is understandable. Cities change their identities. Technologies shift. Political priorities realign. The future that Los Angeles has decided to build for itself is electric, solar-powered, and zero-emission, a version of urban life in which the oil beneath its streets feels like an artifact of an older and dirtier era, best left sealed in the rock where it lives. But the oil has not made that decision. It is still there, exactly where it has always been, under the same pressure that has driven it toward the surface for millions of years. Still sitting in those underground chambers, still seeping through the rock toward Wilshire Boulevard, still waiting, indifferently, for whatever comes next. If the economics ever change, if the technology gets cheaper, if global prices climb high enough, if the political calculus shifts in ways that are not currently visible, the oil field that built Los Angeles once before could do something that almost nobody in this city is expecting. It could resurface, in more ways than one. The tar pits are still bubbling on Wilshire Boulevard. They have been since before the Ice Age. They are not stopping now. They have never stopped. They are simply waiting for someone to look down from the freeway, past the boutiques and the beachfront listings, and notice what is actually there, again.